I love tubeless bike racks. These are the racks that we used when we rode across the country carrying no less than 150 pounds of gear. For carrying large or heavy loads, you can't really beat a good bike rack. These days, however, we're not doing fully loaded touring, so we're using our racks less, although they do come in super handy on very specific trips and occasions. So most of the time we're running our bikes rackless, and although it's not that big of a deal to install and uninstall a bike rack, it is just 4 bolts, however, it is enough resistance to make it kind of a pain in the butt. You have to worry about not cross-threading and making sure you don't lose the hardware. I usually end up taping all the required hardware on the various racks that we use. If only there was a better way. Enter the Ortlieb Quick Rack. Let me take it off to show you guys. It's an interesting solution for a person that doesn't want to run a rack on their bike all the time. Maybe you're filled with that existential dread about having a rack. It's holding you back. Now, my friends, you can take it off in like 15 seconds. Or maybe like us, you're doing a lot of travel and it's kind of a pain in the butt to remove a rack and stuff it in the case. This makes it that much easier. So there are 2 versions of the Quick Rack. There is a version without a platform. This is the one with a platform. I feel like for me, this makes the most sense because I never know if I just want to use it as a bag support or whether I want to put painters on it. This is the heavier of the 2 at 580 grams. Its stated weight capacity is about 44 pounds, which is, I think, pretty good. And the MSRP as of the time I'm filming this video, at least in the UK, is around 70 to 90 pounds, which translates to just around $100, maybe a little bit over, which in the scheme of nicely made racks is actually quite a bargain. Basically, the way that this works is that it mounts to some specific lugs that you put on the eyelets of your bike. And then there is this clamping system, fairly stiff to operate, which is a good thing. You don't want them opening accidentally. These ends lock onto those lugs, and then you've got this quick release seat stay piece, and that's it. Basically 3 points of engagement: your seat post and those rack specific lugs. Installation is, theoretically very straightforward, but it can get tricky depending on your bike. For example, those lugs that you screw into the eyelets have to be in a very specific spot. I tried to run this initially on the crust, but the eyelet was below the dropout, and when it's in that position, it just creates too much interference with this lever. So for it to work, you have to have your rack eyelets or mounting eyelets above the dropout. If you don't have eyelets, or let's say I really wanted to put it on the crust for whatever reason, they do make stay adapters that zip tie to your seat stay, so you can mount this a lot easier on virtually any bike. The locking levers here are surprisingly tight and take quite a bit of force to open, which, again, is a good thing. But it can be a little shocking when you're trying to install it for the first time, how much force is required to actually actuate the lever. I'm gonna show you how this installs. So basically the bottom clips here go around the lugs. Gotta position that in the right place. Sometimes it takes a little time to actually find to center it on there. And then you just throw the lever, that's locked down. And then you go to the strap here. This goes around, and this is kind of a tightening cam lever here, kind of like a quick release. Okay, so elephant in the room. Inevitably, this is going to be compared to the Tailfin rack system, which arguably has kicked off this whole quick release rear rack. I haven't tried the Tailfin personally. There's lots of video reviews out there on it. From what I can gather, the functionality is very similar, both attached to a seat post, and both use a kind of quick release locking system on the bottom. The Tailfin comes in carbon as well as alloy options, so you can shave off as much as 180 grams, but you are gonna pay for it. Those 180 grams are going to cost you double, if not triple, depending on which rack option you use. They are really light and racy and sleek, and definitely speaks to a certain market. For me, however, my biggest concern and why I would probably lean towards the Ortlieb is the proprietary rail system. Let me take this off again to show you guys. Seat post clamp. Okay, so what I mean is this. These rails are your standard 10mm rails. You can work with any Ortlieb bag, Arkel bag, Swift Industries bag, whatever pannier out there, it's gonna work with this rack. With the Tailfin, you're kind of locked into the very specific bag system, which is a lot. I mean, if you went totally baller, you're looking at a $300 rack and then $150 for one pannier. If you got two, you're about 600 deep, and then you gotta rock the seat bag. So that's like another 100 bucks. At the end of the day, that is a lot of coin. Tailfin does offer an adapter system for an additional $50, which adds a really stubby, short 10 millimeter rail. Again, I haven't tried it, but just looking at it, it's pretty short, so won't work with all bags. It also doesn't seem very triangulated. And one advantage of this rack, because of this kind of dog leg design, if you're running a pannier that doesn't have a really rigid back, it's not gonna flop into your rear wheel. As opposed to the Tailfin adapter, it's relying on the stiffness of the bag. A great example is this cargo pannier by Arkel that I reviewed. A little bit on the flexy side. Depending on your load, this could potentially wind up in your wheel if you don't have a dog leg rack. Again, I'm not knocking the Tailfin rack system. I know a lot of people love it, and it definitely serves a particular niche. But if you're like me and non-proprietary is your love language, then you're probably gonna lean towards this Ortlieb / Tubus rack a little bit more. So again, not the lightest rack, definitely more affordable, definitely more compatible with most bag systems. Again, this is more of a first look, not a full-blown review. I'm gonna be testing this throughout the spring and summer, and we'll see how it holds up. In my living room installation so far, it seems pretty rock solid. There is the slightest bit of play, but in terms of me being concerned about it falling off the bike, I don't think it's gonna happen. It's pretty secure. I will be curious to see, how much it rattles off-road. Also, this lever system here, it's attached to the rack with kind of a pinned grommet. So I wonder if this will wear down and loosen over time. Who knows? Again, just a first look, not a full-on review. But if you want to see how this quick rack does this year, definitely hit that subscribe button. If you found this first look helpful, please consider supporting the channel by joining us on Patreon. It's how we're able to make independent bike content. And as always, everybody, keep the supple side down.